going to be talking about the true meaning of Christmas, and we're going to consider whether or not that meaning has been lost. Welcome, Paul Francois-Tremlett. Thank you for coming and talking today about this. Now, in other Student Hub Lives, you've been talking about whether Star Wars is the new religion, and I was saying before to HJ that I bet that you're going to go and see the new film that's out
on Saturday.
Yeah. So if you'd like to see Paul talking about that on Catch Up, go back to the archive of the Student Hub Live website, and you can find that there and have a look at what he has to say about that. But today we're going to be talking about whether or not the true meaning of Christmas has been lost, because you're, from the Department of Religious Studies, where obviously you look at religions, of which there are many, many different ones, Christianity being but just one of a lot of celebrations around this time of year. And you look really at the way at which we practice some of these ideas and the way in which these religious festivals give us a way of acting out social identities, both individually and within groups.
That's right. I suppose I'll start just by pointing to the an article called Towards a Theory of Santa.
Right.
So we actually, even write about Christmas as academics and scholars. That's an article from a journal called Anthropology Today. And, Christmas is a ritual. It's a ritual with gifts and families and friendship groups coming together to participate in sharing a bit of wine, some mince pies. And this is all fantastic, by the way. It looks great. And these occasions when people come together to do these, to share, to eat and drink and give gifts to each other. These are we often think of our society as secular, but moments like this. Maybe moments like this seem to indicate that religious meanings aren't being lost. They're just being reconfigured. They're working themselves out in different ways.
We asked our audience, and if you haven't had a chance to tell us what you think using the interactive widgets, we've asked what Christmas means to you. Do you think the meaning of Christmas has been lost? Do you feel there's too much excess at Christmas? Name 3 things you feel is excessive. And can exchanging gifts with loved ones re-facilitate connections? Going back to that idea that Matthias and I were talking about very early on. But some of the things that are coming up very strongly in terms of Christmas are things like family, stress and peace are the key words that are most prominent. Would you say that's very common?
Well, I don't know if it's common, but it sounds nice. This morning you've been talking about lots of stressful things or stressful elements of study, like TMAs and that kind of thing. So this session we can, and maybe in a more relaxed way, think about some of the nicer dimensions of Christmas. Yes, it's a time of, we like to think that Christmas could be a time of peace, time of goodwill between peoples. It's also a time when a magical being, I mean, we often wonder about secular cultures and atheists, but Santa, Father Christmas, this magical being comes into our homes, provides gifts, gives gifts, facilitates the giving of gifts. This is a wonderful time of year for people, regardless of their ethnicity, identity, religious background, or whatever.
How important is it, do you think? I mean, religious studies and religious festivals, there are so many ideas, and there's this distinction between believing in something and being able to practice something. And we spoke in one of our pod mags very recently that you can access on the resources page of the website, incidentally, about the extent to which you can or cannot opt into religions. Christmas is something that people, atheists will often participate in, even if they don't believe in something. Whereas there are other things like Hanukkah, for example, that you may not feel like you can participate in if you aren't within a certain cultural group or denomination. What's so different about Christmas in terms of a festival that most people feel that they can participate in some way in this festival?
Well, when we think about religion, we often think about that there must be beliefs, and then there's the things that there are practices, the things that people do or we do, and sometimes we see practice and belief as being very closely linked, that there must be something you believe in order to make you then carry out an action, and sometimes we see them as separate, and that you don't necessarily have to believe in something to go and do it. I think that Christmas, there's not necessarily a huge amount of cognitive content for Christmas, or belief content, let's say. Christmas is all around us. Some people think it's just become a festival of consumption, a festival of capitalism. The shops are packed, the streets are packed. You can't get to the places you used to be able to go because there's so many people around. But at the same time, what are those people doing? They're buying presents for their loved ones. They're giving. They're making gifts. Hopefully giving to charities and those kinds of things too. And that's a wonderful thing. But at the same time, there are people who do believe very strongly about certain things. In 1951, in Dijon, in France, angry clerics, burnt an effigy of Santa because they felt that Santa was, as it were, emptying Christmas of its, essentially for them anyway, Christian and religious meaning. I think if we think about Christmas, it's maybe a pagan festival going back to the winter and the importance of feasting and being able to see the coming of the new year and the sun. It's a part of our culture. It's also part of capitalism, and Santa is really just an icon for Coca-Cola. That's another thing we talked about on the PodMag. But yeah, all those things are true, but don't forget gifting, giving, sharing. This is the core, and these are values that we can all share.
We asked our audience if they feel there's too much excess at Christmas, and unanimously, they pretty much agree that they do think that there is too much excess at Christmas. They also agreed that they think that, although to slightly a lesser extent, the meaning of Christmas has been lost. So my question to you then is, if this is a festival where we're, doing some positive things, how important is that meaning? How important is it that we think, well, it has to have this right meaning because this was how it started? Could it be a case of saying, actually, this is a time of year where the shops close, we have an enforced rest maybe for a certain part of the day, we do nice things for others and try and be mindful of our neighbours, and we put things up and try and make ourselves feel a bit cheery at a time of year that's very dark. How important is it that we think about that spiritual or religious side of Christmas in all of these celebrations?
Well, I'd want us to get away from the idea that a specific real meaning is being lost. Every time we do the things that we do, we are making new meanings. And those new meanings are just as valid as others. And I think we should we should be looking to create the meanings we want for this particular time of year, for this particular ritual, for this particular festival, rather than getting hung up on that there must be a real meaning that somehow has disappeared. No, don't worry about that. Create the meaning that you want through the ritual. The ritual allows you to do that.
Matthias and I were talking earlier on about these ideas that people can feel pressured into conforming and colluding with ideas. And I guess what you're saying is that you can reinvent certain things, you can establish meanings. Giving gifts, people have said that 33 has said that exchanging gifts can facilitate connection. So there is the sense there that doing those things can be a really positive things for people. So what you're saying then, I guess, is how people create meanings, and religious studies will study how a religious festival can facilitate those shared meanings and changes over time. Where would you say we're at now in terms of our society and culture? We're in the UK here, but not all of our audience are. Where would you say we're shifting, and what's interesting about studying those meanings over time?
Oh, that's a big question.
We've only got a few minutes. Do your best.
2016 has been, a really big year for all sorts of reasons. Politically, I think we'd all agree, Brexit vote, whatever side you were on in that debate, that's a big decision. Donald Trump becoming president of the USA is a huge thing that's happening. The war in Syria and the terrible things that have been happening in Aleppo. These are big things that have made a big difference to how we look back over the last 12 months. And I think it's really important that we have a space to remind ourselves of our humanity. And when you give a gift without expectation of return, that is a very wonderful thing to do. And that's something we hopefully can take into 2017. And to try and make our politics and our economics and our religious studies and our studies in general a little bit more humane.
What do you think about this idea then, just suddenly struck me. I mean, Matt was talking about having some time off between Christmas and the New Year. And there's been a lot on social media about, obviously New Year's resolutions and being thankful for everything that we've got. Do you think that we're going towards a point of having this reflective period almost between Christmas and New Year, where a lot of people are thinking, thank goodness 2016 is nearly over. What am I going to do for 2017? What can I be thankful for? Is there some sense of not an enforced, but a communal, reflective time where we're thinking about what has happened and what is coming up? And actually that's quite a nice space to have for people when they're starting to replan things for the new year.
I think that is what happens over the Christmas and the New Year period, and maybe more for the New Year period. People do tend to look back and look forward, and in that moment of reflection, you do try and, the New Year's resolution, as you just said, that's that opportunity to think about, well, what can I do better next year, or what would I like to make happen next year? But it's. I don't know, really.
No, it's a difficult one, isn't it? What I find so interesting about religious studies is the way that you combine so many different disciplines. I mean, it's almost everything but religious studies, because you're looking at anthropology, sociology, geography, psychology, all of the ways in which people, act these things out. What's interesting for you about studying studying Christianity and Christmas from a religious studies perspective? You talked about some of these icons that are really big right now. Would you say that's the one thing that differentiates Christmas as a religious festival from some of the others, that commercial consumerism side of things with the marketing and the icons?
Well, there's two questions there. Why is studying Christmas something that's positive to do? Because religious studies isn't some sort of ivory tower academic enterprise. It's about studying real people living their real lives that we know, because we're the ones living those lives and we're the ones doing these things, right? So we're studying contemporary society, contemporary religiosity and spirituality, and those can sometimes take secular forms, and sometimes they take more traditionally religious forms. So what is religious studies? What makes it interesting? Because it's about us, and it's about now, and it's about the world we live in and the world that matters. So that's that question. And the other question, Christmas is different to other religious festivals for exactly the reason that you've identified. It has been, like no other festival, it has been commercialized, let's say. It's been seen as a commercial opportunity. And so when we go into our towns, cities and villages, the shops are full of Christmas, the street, the decorations, the opportunities for merchandising and all of that. You can't really escape it. And I can't think of a festival from another religious tradition which has become a vehicle for that kind of commercialism. I don't know. Maybe some of our students have got some ideas about that.
Yeah, Halloween, I think, is, from my perspective, is getting progressively more commercial. But it's interesting that I guess there's a limit to how commercial something can get. I mean, we've sort of got like a marker at when we can start advertising Christmas, and it's only acceptable to do that, I think, from October or something like that, isn't it?
Well, it feels like August, but
yeah, exactly. But there are some parameters about what we can do, whereas some, like Halloween, are maybe increasing because there aren't those social norms around things. Sophie and HJ, have people come up with ideas about what Christmas means from that side of things?
We've had quite a lot of comments, actually. It's been really nice. So we've had Holly, who says that she believes the meaning of Christmas has changed, but there is no reason it cannot mean different things to different people. And for her, it's about kindness and thought and caring for others, and reflecting on the past and looking to the year ahead, which I think most people tend to agree with, actually. It's a lot of reflection has been noted. We've had Lucy, who said, I'm not a Christian, but I value this time of year as a chance to think of others and celebrate together. So there's been some really nice talk about that, talk about charities. A lot of people give into charity at this time of year as well.
I think two comments that I'd pull out is Luigi said that I think Christmas has transcended Christianity in the UK at least, which is a very interesting point, as I think we're reminded a lot, at least in politics, that we're a Christian nation. And I think that's a interesting point. And I think Holly's point. Did you say Holly's point?
I might have done.
We've covered Holly's point. But so a very interesting discussion happening here.
Yeah, definitely.
So if we were an essay, Paul, we would say, in response to the question, has the true meaning of Christmas been lost to a capitalism idea? We'd say, possibly, but it doesn't really matter because we can make a new meaning.
Yeah, and we'd probably use the idea of invented tradition to argue for that, yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for joining me. That's been really interesting, and also really interesting insight into religious studies at the Open University as well.
Been a pleasure.
Thank you. And we've got some wonderful resources from not only Paul's section, but many of the other sections on the website. So do check those out, and particularly the time management ones, which may be helpful if you want to get a grip on that. You'll see some new widgets coming up on your screen now. So we want to know whether you've enjoyed the Student Hub Live event. Do you feel you've learned something new? Although I think you're pretty clued up, to be completely honest. And what 3 words sum up your experience of this event? So it'd be really good to see what 3 words you most associate with this event. Maybe it's topics we've discussed, maybe it's a sense of community, maybe it's talking to other people, maybe it's pies and food. But let us know, and if you don't have 3 things, you can just put a full stop in one of those boxes and press enter, and then it will populate your results. Well, I'd like to thank all of my guests who've been on today. We've had Paul Francois-Tremlett, Matt Staples, Stephanie St Clair and Matthijs Lucassen, who've been fabulous and given us a really varied programme that I hope you found useful. Obviously, Sophie and HJ, thank you very much. Have we covered all of the things that you two wanted to cover?
I think so. It's been really good, really engaging in the chat. We have got a couple of extra baubles that we've just been passed through, and I desperately want to show the snowflake that Laura has done. I did mistakenly say Holly in the chat. I'm very sorry, Laura. It's a gorgeous snowflake. It really puts mine to shame. So I'm going to have to learn this next year, and that will be my trick.
And Stuart also says wrapping is going well. So I think that's a lovely picture that he's showing us there.
Wrapping up a teddy is quite difficult, actually. You don't really think about it.
It's like wrapping a bike, isn't it?
Yes. And the very last one is from Debbie, and this is her cat Rosie, which is her study buddy. We do like a good study buddy. So thank you so much for sending those through. If you have sent us a picture, please also send us your address so that we can get a nice poster out to you, because obviously if we don't have your address, we can't do that. So if you can send that through to us, studenthub@open.ac.uk, and we can get that out to you as soon as possible.
And we've had such a good time chatting. If there's anything that we've missed, remember to email us as well, and we'd love to get back to you.
Lovely. Well, thank you both. You've done a fabulous job as normal. And thank you for everyone backstage also who's been helping out on the chat and the social media as well. So I've mentioned the resources on the website that you can go and take a look at. We also have a feedback, because we like to reflect on our feedback at the Student Hub Live. So if you can take a few moments, there's a very, very short form on the website that will tell us what you've enjoyed, whether you've got any suggestions about things that we could do differently or areas that you'd like us to cover. Please do enter that data onto that very brief form on the website and let us know what you think. If you'd like to email us, though, or there's something a bit more detailed or specific you'd like to tell us, please email us studenthub@open.ac.uk, and we would love to hear from you as well. Don't forget, as I told you earlier, that you can nominate your tutor for an Outstanding Tutor Award, and also if you are asked to participate in that National Student Satisfaction Survey by Ipsos Mori in the new year, please do so, because we really like that feedback also. We're going to keep the chat room open for another half an hour so that you can say your farewells, etc., and we're going to play a couple of short videos as well after the session. And I hope you all have a wonderful Christmas and New Year. I hope you get some time with your friends and your family, and that you get to celebrate some peace, reflection and good studies over Christmas and the New Year. Do drop your tutor an email. Keep up with your studies. Open University students have a really great Twitter account as well. So if you do want to reach out to other students, that is another place that you can do so. And that's all. Sophie and HJ, what are you hoping for Christmas?
I don't know. It's been so busy with assignments. I haven't really had much time to think about that, but I think I'm going to write my list to Santa tonight. I've
seen a distinct lack of snow this year, so I am hoping for a white Christmas. That's all I would like.
Well, Sophie, you don't make things very easy, do you?
Please.
But, no, I know I was looking back on Facebook, and I think about 6 years ago it was at... Oh my goodness.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Well, there you go, Sophie.
Thanks.
Just goes to show anything is
think.
possible. Right, on that note, I'd like to say thank you so much for logging in. I really hope you've enjoyed the event. Thanks to everyone who's helped put this on. And that's all from us here at the Student Hub Live for now. We'll see you next time. We've got some more events lined up in January. Do click on the Count Me In button and we'll tell you when they're on. See you very soon. Have a great Christmas and Happy New Year. Gosh, it's very cold in here.
Oh, it's freezing.
I didn't.
My hair.
Guys, still on there.